Thank you, everybody, for joining us today on Today with BEB. I am your host, Jeff Niebaum with your Better Business Bureau. And on today's episode, we're going to talk about a topic that is kind of has some taboo around it, if you will, and that's the financial status of businesses right now, and whether it's right to try to make a profit right now, or try to sell, or even fundraise. And if it is, how does that look? And on today's episode, our guest is Eve McLean, the Director of Education for our friends over at the Business Ethics Alliance. And we're going to help businesses kind of walk through this process and tell them that it is okay, if you will, and how to do it ethically, because that's what it all comes down to, is ethics. So Eve, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm super excited. And just to piggyback on what you said there, it is about making sure that we keep our ethics during this time. When we're in a period of crisis or undue stress, what happens is we get into that fight or flight mode and we think, how are we going to survive through this? And it's easy to forget that this is going to end one day, and the reputation that you earned through the crisis is going to be what stands at the end of this, right? So as we're trying to make our way through this, we're trying to do it with as much grace and ethics as possible. And it's really hard to focus on that right now. So we hope some of these tips will help.
So let's jump right into it. In talking with some of the businesses that you have been, and in your blog that you wrote about, you mentioned people are trying to rapidly re-image their business. And right there in itself, that causes stress times 100, because being in marketing, I know you have your marketing plan, but then you throw a wrench into it and everything has to change. Right. And so what have you, when talking with businesses, what have they specifically said about the re-imaging of their brand?
So what it is they're looking for relevancy. So if you look at the crisis situation, what's happening in our world is that people are pulling back to Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and they're pulling to that bottom layer. What do I need right now to feel safe, to feel fed, to feel protected? So if you're talking about, do you want to go to a movie? That is not playing to what people are desiring right now. So companies are thinking, okay, how can I be relevant in this crisis so that I can survive through this crisis? So the stress that we're seeing right now is these companies trying to figure out how to pivot as fast as they can to remain relevant so that they can survive through the crisis. And that's that reimagining component.
Okay. Wait, that was a great explanation of that. And surviving. So it comes down to the huge concern about profiting during this crisis.
That's right.
Can we just dive into that a little bit and explain, is it bad to make a profit right now?
See, now that's the heart. That's the heart of what we're going to talk about. So I like that. Is it okay to sell right now? Is it okay to make a profit? The answer is yes. So let's back up. Well, hang on. Before I back up, let me put a caveat to that. Okay. It is okay. We have an obligation to sell right now. We have an obligation to keep business going. But we also have an obligation to do it ethically. So this is not permission for business to survive at all costs. This is not permission for that. This is permission to say it is ethical to sell right now. It is ethical to fundraise right now. It is ethical to do everything within your proper ethical powers to keep your business afloat. And there's a macro reason for this. So on a macro level, the economy must go on, right? The economy is this exchange between buy and sell and goods and services, and all this floating of money is going around carefully between the employer and the vendor and the employee and the customer, and it's this float. And that's what's been disrupted right now. And we can't survive without an economy. We simply cannot survive without one. Business is the major reason that we have the lifestyle that we have today, all of us. So we have to be able to survive as an economy. And I was listening to an economist earlier before writing this blog, and I've mentioned it in the blog, where she comes out and actually says, as economists, we realize that you're either going to starve because you're at home, you can't get out, you can't work, you can't do this, or we put you out in the world and you may die of this virus. So we're trying to balance, when do we open the economy? How do we open the economy? Because there's risks associated with both of this, and they're huge, huge risks. So what we know at the bottom of this is that business as an institution must survive this. The economy must survive this. And we have to do it in a way that when we look back, we're proud of the way that we went through the unimaginable. So yes, we must be able to sell right now. We must be able to fundraise. And I'm also going to lay a little truth on here. We're not all going to make it.
I was just going to say that. Not every business is going to survive.
That's exactly
just the
right.
way the cookie crumbles, if you will, throwing it back to one of my favorite movies, Bruce Almighty's. Which is unfortunate and super sad. But that's the way it is. And that's why you just have to do and keep striving to survive.
Yes.
And that's what the only thing you can do is strive, but you have to do it ethically.
Yes. And that goes back to the first point you raised. So people are reimagining themselves because they're saying, okay, I've got to make it through this, which means selling this, what I've always sold before, is no longer relevant to what the audience needs. The audience is needing something from the bottom level of the Maslow. Okay, how can I position myself to provide that right now? And that's what companies are trying to do to remain relevant. And I say, bingo, well done, right? That's how we pivot as companies and do our best.
I think there's been a lot of great examples out there I know a local brewery here in town, instead of selling their beer, they have switched it to hand sanitizer. I mean, that's a perfect example of staying relative and re-imaging your brand to keep your brand in people's minds and do good at the same time and provide a great service.
Sorry about that. Yes. So let's talk about that one, because now you get into a funny little gray area over here. So that company that did that, the one that I'm thinking of, donated that to the organization, or donated that to the community. So they remained relevant, but they didn't make money off of it. So what I'm seeing also out in the market is people are getting super nervous because they don't want to look like they're profiteering from what's going on. So if they had done that, pivoted, and then started selling that, the question many of those companies are asking is it right to sell it? And then where it gets even more complicated is many of those companies have asked others to donate to them. So they've said, can you donate raw supplies to me? And then they turn around and say, I've got donated supplies. Is it right for me to sell this now that people have donated? And can I skip a little ahead and talk about why that's okay?
Yes, for sure.
Okay. So it is okay, but we have to be transparent with each other. So if you were taking those donations, for example, you need to tell people up front, hey, my intent with this is to charge a small fee to cover the costs that it's taking us to make this into the final product. So we appreciate your contribution, and we're just telling you up front the intent is to sell some of this. We actually ran a scenario in one of our Mind Candy dialogues. So we had over 100 business people with us, virtually, of course, and we asked them this question. We posed it to them and said, can you take donated materials and turn around and sell it? How would you feel about that? And overwhelmingly, people said it was fine, just tell us. Yes. So our people are not upset that we're trying to make money. And we have to be careful with our own self-tapes that says, it's not right for me to sell. It is okay for you to sell. Be transparent. Do not hoard 550 bottles of Perel and then sell it for $30 a piece. That's unethical.
And you will get caught.
Yes, you will, because it's also illegal. So that's exactly right. Not only unethical, illegal. So what we're saying here is be transparent up front, but it is okay to pivot your company, do something else, and to sell it for a reasonable price. People get that and understand that right now.
Yes, because you got to think of your company's reputation. And true colors really come out during times of crisis. And people will remember how they are treated right now, and that could affect your business in the future. So
it will affect it.
Yes, it will. It will. And so you have to keep that in your mind at all times right now and be very delicate with that, because that will be a factor moving forward and if people do business with you.
That's
So
exactly
that's a great
right.
point.
It not only is it the way you're framing it. What I'm going to do is I'm going to echo that back to ethics real quick. When we think about what does it take to be ethical, we think like there's a rule book. There's like 5,200 rules that I have to memorize and try to adhere to. And if I'm a small business, I'm like, no. If I'm a large business, I've got a whole group of compliance people. I have a department called ethics and compliance. I have an HR group that worries about the people ethical stuff. I've got it all divided up.
Yep.
If I'm a small business, I got me, myself, and
Yep.
I. And so what does ethics mean? The easiest way to think about it is doing the right thing for the right reason, so that in the end, that reputation stands up.
Mm-hmm.
So don't overcomplicate things. Your end goal is that, yes, you've done things the right way, but your business end goal is that your reputation has sustained. So, and that's why we make some of the decisions we make. That's why we say, yeah, I could make a lot more money because I'm the only one that sells, this hand sanitizer. I could make a bunch of short-term profit if I jack those prices up. But then in the end, you're going to lose those long-term sales.
Yes, 100%. And that was so beautifully put. And simplicity can go such a long ways in business. I mean, today's day of technology and 100 million things being thrown at you, you think you have to get complicated with things and invent something new to make your business be shown out there. But actually, just doing the simple things of what your community stands for and what you
Right.
stand for as a business with your values goes a very, very long way.
That's exactly right. And that's what we expect. We don't always say it like in Omaha, Nebraska, but you'll notice people will say, people are just nice here. People do the
Yes.
right thing
Yep.
here. You know what they're talking about? They're talking about a reputation of ethics as a community business. That's what they're saying. They can see it, and they see it through the way people act towards each other.
Our reputation is great here. When we have
Mm-hmm.
speakers come in from, and I know at the Business Ethics Alliance, you have speakers come in from all over, and they always say Omaha is such a great city. The people are so nice, and the businesses, like, they are not trying to screw people. And
That's right.
I mean, it's sad to say most of those people that are saying that are from the East Coast or West Coast. So I mean, that speaks volumes.
We have Nebraska nice.
Yes, we have Nebraska nice. And I mean, that speaks for all businesses everywhere, is if you just do the right things, it will go a long ways and help you be more profitable in the end.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
so transparency, again, great job and great point. Walk me through, in your blog, you mentioned the far, wide, and high framework.
Yes.
Can we let the audience know about that a little bit?
Yes, one of my favorite frameworks. So as many people know, Dr. Beverly Crocker is one of the founders of the Business Ethics Alliance, and she's an ethicist. She lives and breathes ethics,
We love
right?
that. We love that.
So she's fantastic. So she developed and created a way that we can put an ethics lens on our decision-making process. All of us are making decisions every day, every second, and we don't necessarily follow a fancy-dancy process to do it, right? We've been doing it since we were little. We've made decisions.
Yep.
So what Dr. Bev has introduced is a series of questions that help us to ensure that we're thinking about the long-term impact and consequences and reputation that should come from this. So it helps us to make sure we're thinking ethically when we're making decisions. And what she calls it is the far, wide, and high. So if you're looking out far, you're looking at the consequences. And the simplest question to ask is, I'm looking at a business problem I have. I've come up with some possible options. As I look across those options, what are the long-term consequences to the options I've chosen? So that's the first thing you look through, is the long-term consequences. You look far. Then you look wide. You look at, what obligations do I have? What obligations do I have to my employees, to my customers? What obligations do I have to vendors? Is there a legal obligation? Is one of the things you're considering have a legal implication? Like, if I do triple, quadruple the price here, that's actually illegal. So you have to look at the obligations that you have, whether it's in the legal realm or even your professional organizations. If you're an accountant or an attorney, you belong to a professional organization that has told you what's acceptable ways to conduct business. So you have to consider that. So it's kind of looking at those obligations you have. And that's what we say when we say look far. And the last one is look high. And this is probably my favorite. This is, what do you aspire to be known as a company? What are your long-term aspirations? What does your best right person look like? And a lot of companies will fall back to their values. When we were in a perfect scenario, we set out a list of values that said, this is how we want to act as a company. Now we're in crisis. Let's go back to what we said was how we wanted to act. So what you said probably doesn't change. How you enable it probably will.
Yes.
If you said that you were going to care for your employees, what caring for your employees when the economy is awesome and you're all in a building together looks really different than when jobs are real scarce and we're teetering to keep our companies open. Caring looks differently when you've put them all remote. So you go back to those values and say, what do I want to be known for at the end? I want to be known for whatever my values were, that I cared for my employees, that I put my customers first in the midst of this, whatever those are. So you go back to that, what do I want to be known for? And you run your scenarios through there, your options through there, and then you make the best decision you can. And that is what it means to think far, wide, and high.
Wonderfully put. And a point a lot of businesses are thinking about right now is clients. But what makes up your business? What makes your business your business? And that's your employees.
Yeah.
And you've got to have a major focus on them as well, because if you don't, they're going to see this and they're going to say, wow, this is how our leadership is acting, or our business really is when times get tough, when you should be shining brighter than you ever are. And having those values should just carry you through this situation. And some employees might decide to leave their company at the end of this because they didn't like how things are handled. Because guess what? Crises are going to happen.
Well, and it's going to happen even if you're ethical. So I like that you brought that up, because so you've gone through this, you've gone far, wide, and high, and you come to a conclusion and you go, this is the best conclusion that I can come up with at this minute. There's still going to be people that look at that and say, that's not enough for me. Whether it's an employee, a vendor, a customer, a partner, it can be any of your stakeholders that are going to say that. So these are not easy things. We're not trying to decide what to have for lunch. We're trying to figure out who gets hours and who doesn't get hours, who gets laid off, who doesn't get laid off. What partner can we continue with that can fit our supply chain? These are what we call ethical dilemmas. They are a component that has two right answers, and both answers have a cost associated with them. And when you come to a conclusion around an ethical dilemma, not everybody's going to support you. So you need to make darn sure that it is in alignment with what you think is right, because you're going to have to stand firm on that agreement that you've made.
And I think this all surrounds one of the Business Ethics Alliance identified values is financial vitality.
Yep, that's exactly right.
Talk to our viewers a little bit about that.
Yeah. So we think at the Business Ethics Alliance, we think that it's okay to make money. So a lot of people look at the concept of money, and there's this weird polarizing thing happening that says if you're profitable, if you're making money, then you're not ethical. And that's not what we support. We support that it is ethical to make money. You have to do it the right way. You have to be honoring to the multiple stakeholders you have, because you have lots. Employees, like you said, are stakeholders. Upper management is stakeholders. Clients are stakeholders. Vendors are stakeholders. There's so many that are stockholders are stakeholders. There are many, many stakeholders that a management team is constantly balancing. But at the end of the day, it is not unethical to make money, and we actually support that. So we say it's okay to make money, and what we are challenging people to do, and that they are rising to the challenge, is do it in a way that's ethical.
And in the long run, you will be more profitable if you are ethical.
Yeah, there's
People
lots of
gravitate.
studies.
People gravitate. They trust,
Hmm.
which we'll get into on our next episode.
Hmm.
Companies that do things right.
Yep.
If you do things right, you will be profitable. That,
Hmm.
and we will get into that next episode. But so just wrapping up real quick, um, if you are one of these businesses viewing this, it's okay to be vulnerable right now. I mean,
Hmm.
we're all in trying times, but it's okay to sell and make profit as long as you're
Yes.
doing it ethically, as long as you're transparent, as long as you're looking far, wide, and high, and using that framework. It'll help you get through this, and it will be okay.
Yeah, that's what our hope is, right? Our hope and goal is that it's going to be okay at the end of this. And we have to have that. We have to have that hope. And like we said earlier, it may not work for every one of us, but we want to know that at the end of the day, no matter what the outcome, we're proud of the way we acted through this time.
Yes, that's a great point. Keep striving. Keep
Mhm.
striving as a business to make not only yourself better, but people around you. Because guess what? If you are an ethical business and you do things the right way, your competition is going to take a view at that and be like, we got to be more like them. What are they doing different? And
Mhm.
ethics can make you stand out more than anything else. But
Mhm.
any marketing campaign, as many customers, it will help you stand out more than anything else.
It's your
Well,
reputation.
your reputation is everything, and people will remember how you treated them, especially during times of crisis.
Mhm.
So, thank you, Eve, for joining us today. And I look forward to our next time we're going to chat about how to be viewed as a trustworthy business to all your stakeholders.
I love it.
We mentioned it a little bit today, but we're really going to dive into it next time. So, Eve, thank you again for joining us today. And you provided some great education and great points of emphasis. So, thank you.
My pleasure. Thanks so much for having me.
Yes, and thank you to all of you who took the time to check us out on Today with BEB. And we will be back shortly, so stay tuned. Have a great day, everyone.